Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Museum Munchkins. I'm Mr. Nick, and today we are talking all about this animal right behind me, the giraffe. And we're going to start off by singing a giraffe song if you want to stand up on your feet. So this is a song that I wrote about a giraffe named Brian. And Brian keeps a lookout for all of his friends. And now you might recognize the song, what it sounds like, because it sounds like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But this song is about Brian, and he's a very big giraffe. So we're going to sing this song together. Let's sing it 2 times in a row. The first time, I'll sing it kind of slowly, so you can hear more of the words maybe, and then we'll speed it up a little bit for the second time that we sing this song. Are you ready? Great, and we can move and dance around to this giraffe song while we listen to it, all right? Here we go. Brian the big giraffe, he stood tall above the rest, and you could always see him higher than a birdie's nest. All of the other animals would always run away and hide when there were scary predators like hyenas or a lion pride. Then one hot and sunny day, while he looked across the plains, he saw a hungry lion creep, and he yelled, "Watch out so we don't get eaten!" And all the animals loved him for watching out for all his friends. Brian the big giraffe, our love for you just never ends. All right, let's sing it again one more time. And do you remember the part where Brian yells, "Watch out"? Let's see if we can all do that part together. Brian the big giraffe, he stood tall above the rest, and you could always see him higher than a birdie's nest. All of the other animals would always run away and hide when there were scary predators like hyenas or a lion pride. Then one hot and sunny day, while he looked across the plains, he saw a hungry lion creep, and he yelled, "Watch out so you don't get eaten!" And all the animals loved him for watching out for all his friends. Brian the big giraffe, our love for you just never ends. Very good. I hope you guys had fun listening and dancing around to that giraffe song. But now we can find a seat while I put my guitar away so we can talk all about giraffes. I'm going to set my guitar down right back here, and then we can talk and learn all about giraffes. Have you ever seen a giraffe before? Maybe you've been to the zoo, or maybe you've even been to a wildlife park that has giraffes walking around, or maybe you've even been lucky enough to go and visit where giraffes live in the wild. We find giraffes only on one continent on our planet in the wild. They live way over here on the other side of the world in Africa. And we find them in a lot of areas around Africa, but they really like places where there's lots of grass and trees and things for them to hide around or hide amongst. So we call those kind of savanna prairies or savanna woodlands. And if you have any questions while we're talking about giraffes right now, you can leave those questions in the comments, and we're going to answer some of them a little bit later on. Now, giraffes are the tallest animals that live on land in the entire world. They're taller than any other animal that walks on land. Pretty interesting, right? So they usually stand about 14 to 18 feet tall. And even the biggest giraffe that's ever been discovered was actually over 19 feet tall. That means if you've ever been to our museum, to the Kenosha Public Museum, a giraffe, their necks will stretch and their long legs will stretch all the way from our lobby all the way up to the balcony of our mezzanine on the second floor of our museum. They are very tall animals. Now, and like I said, they're only found in Africa. Now, we used to think that there was just one type of giraffe, but that there was a lot of different types of that one giraffe. But now, actually, just this year, scientists who study giraffes have learned a little bit more about them and actually think that there are 8 different types of giraffes. They're all just very, very similar to each other, but they live in different places. And now, I think that that's pretty interesting because science is changing all the time as scientists work and learn new things, even things about animals we thought we knew a lot about already. We're always learning and exploring new things. That's one of my favorite parts about learning about science. Now, if someone were to ask you, what do you know about giraffes? Other than that they're really tall and have a really long neck, you might say that giraffes also have spots. Yeah, can we look at this giraffe and can you see all the different spots on its neck? So giraffes have really interesting shaped spots on their bodies. They don't have round spots that are like circles like lots of other animals do. They have kind of lots of different shaped spots. So sometimes they have pentagons, or this giraffe here, if we look at them, there's lots of straight sides on all these different odd-shaped spots along their bodies. So they have lots of different types of spots, and no two giraffes have the same spots. Kind of a little bit like our fingerprints, how our fingerprints are all different. Giraffes never have the same spots as another giraffe, which I think is pretty interesting. And their spots help them to camouflage. Have you ever heard that word before? So camouflage means that it helps them to hide in their environment. So if we look at the colors of this giraffe, you can see that they're kind of a tannish color with brown spots. Sometimes their spots are more of an orangey color. And those colors help them to blend in with those savanna woodlands where we talked about where they like to live. So all of the trees that they live around and the spaces in between the trees where the light shines through, that's what all that tan color is supposed to look like. And then the darker spots help them to camouflage amongst the trees too. Pretty interesting. I think giraffes are pretty interesting animals. Now, another thing you might say is that giraffes have 2 horns on their heads. That's another thing people know about giraffes, is that they have these 2 bumps on their heads. They're actually not horns. So some animals have horns, like a cow. Cows and buffaloes, they have horns. Some animals have antlers, like a deer has some antlers on their head, but giraffes, they don't have antlers, and they don't have horns. Giraffes have ossicones. Can you say that word with me? Ossicone. Yeah, so they don't have horns or antlers. They have ossicones on their heads, and their ossicones are actually pieces of bone that are stuck to the top of their heads. So very different than antlers or horns. And all giraffes have ossicones, boys and girls. So, but an easy way, or to help us tell the difference between boys and girls based on their ossicones, is girls usually have fuzzy ossicones on their heads, and boys usually have bald ossicones on their heads. But they both have ossicones. I like saying that word a lot. That's a fun word to say, ossicones. Now, what's another thing we could say about the giraffe? They have spots, and they have ossicones, and they have a really long neck. Absolutely. How far can you stretch your neck out? Can you stretch it as far as a giraffe can stretch their neck? I'm trying really hard. Well, giraffes, probably not, because a giraffe, their necks are usually about 6.5 to 8 feet long. That means a giraffe's neck is even longer than my whole body is tall. But you could do an experiment at home and take a ruler or a measuring tape and see how far you could stretch your neck. That might be a fun experiment to see how long your neck is. But even though giraffes have a really long neck, their necks have the same number of bones in it as our necks do. So our neck has 7 bones in it. Can you help me count to 7? Do you know how to count all the way up to 7? Let's see if we can do that together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have 7 bones in their neck, just like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bones in our necks too. Pretty crazy, right? That we have the same number of bones in our neck as giraffes do in that really long neck. And another thing that you might or might not know about giraffes, which is one of my favorite things about giraffes, is that they have a purple tongue. Can you stick out your tongue? Does anybody have a purple tongue? No, our tongues are kind of reddish or pinkish in color, but a giraffe's tongue is purple, and their tongues are really, really long. They're just like their necks. Their tongues can be about 18 inches long. That is a really long tongue. Maybe you can, if while you're measuring your neck, you can measure and see how far you can stick your tongue out too. I bet you can't stick your tongue out 18 inches like a giraffe, and their tongue is, so it's long, it's purple, and it's prehensile, just like a monkey's tail, which means they can grab onto things and wrap their tongue around things and pull the leaves off the tops of trees that they like to eat. Those nice, soft, fresh leaves that are growing on the tops of trees, they can wrap their tongues right around those and pull them off the branches. Pretty interesting. Now, you might be wondering, too, why do giraffes have a purple tongue? I know I talked about that at the beginning, but I haven't talked about why they have a purple tongue yet. Well, some scientists think that their tongue is purple because they spend so much time eating, and where they live, the sun is shining so much of the day that if they didn't have a purple tongue, their tongue would actually get sunburned because it's sticking outside of their mouth so much. The rest of their body is covered in fur, so that helps to protect them from getting sunburned, but not their tongue. And since they're way up high and their tongue isn't shaded underneath the trees and it's sticking out so much, they think that it might get sunburned if it wasn't that darker purple color. Pretty interesting, right? Now, there are so many wonderful and interesting things that we've talked about with the giraffe, but I wonder if giraffes ever get a little bit self-conscious about their spots, or their ossicones, or their purple tongue, or even their really long neck. I wonder. Well, maybe they think that having those beautiful spots and that wonderful long neck isn't so wonderful. And in fact, that's exactly what our story is about today. And we're going to read our story today and see if this giraffe, maybe even though he starts off the story feeling a little bit bad about himself, if we can turn that around. So today's story is called Giraffe Problems by Jory John, and it's illustrated by Lane Smith. I feel bad about my neck. I do. I can't help it. It's too long, too bendy, too narrow, too dopey, too patterned, too stretchy, too high, too lofty, too necky. Yes, my neck is too necky. Everybody stares at it. This guy, and that guy, him, her, them, whatever that is, her again. Yep, I feel bad about my neck. I've tried dressing it up. I've added a scarf, 2 scarves, a bundle of scarves, a mountain of scarves. I've tried bow ties and regular ties and both. I've tried hiding it away. I've used shrubs. I've hung out in ditches. I've stood behind trees. I've spent time in the river. Other animals have necks that just work. Take a gander at this zebra's neck. Stripes always look good. So classic. Quit staring at me. Or gaze upon this elephant's neck, strong and powerful, yet graceful. Stop talking about me. Or glimpse this lion, whose neck is adorned with a glorious mane of flowing locks. What a sight! How inspiring! Why can't I have a neck like that? Are you always this loud? My mom always said I should be proud of my neck. She said other animals would love to have a neck like this. Yeah, right. No offense, Mom, but nobody wants this neck. It's a neck only a mother could love. Sheesh. Good evening. I've been admiring your neck from afar. Oh, how I wish my neck looked like yours. I'd get so much done in a day. Goodness, I can only imagine all the reaching and grabbing and looking around I'd do. I'd accomplish many of my goals for sure. Meanwhile, I'm saddled with this little excuse for a neck. Here, watch me try to stretch it out. Ugh. See? That's about as far as it goes. Pathetic, right? I'm basically neckless. Sigh. You feel bad about your neck, too? Yup. Huh. I'm Cyrus, by the way. I'm Edward. It's lovely to meet you, Cyrus. Can I tell you something else, Edward? Of course, Cyrus. Ahem. There is a hill in the distance which you can surely see from your great vantage. I've stood on that very hill for 7 straight days now, staring skyward, watching as a single piece of fruit, a lone banana, slowly changed from green to yellow, ripening. I've endured windy nights and unseasonably brisk mornings with very little sleep as I waited.
and waited, hoping against hope that the fruit would drop before me so I could sample its sweetness and nourish myself in the process. Yet day after day I felt like such a fool as I stretched my neck toward those greedy branches, only to be limited by my own physical shortcomings.
You want a banana from a tree?
That's what I said, yes.
Whoop. Plunk. Here you go.
Oh, you did it. You made it look so easy. Whoomp. Munch, 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 munch. Delectable. So that's what a banana tastes like, huh? It was worth the wait. Edward, face it, your neck is impressive. It allows you to do amazing things. For instance, you just solved my week-long banana dilemma in 10 seconds.
Well, thank you, Cyrus. I think you have a swell neck, too. It's elegant and dignified, and it works well with your shell.
That means a great deal to me, Edward.
Say, do you like bow ties, Cyrus?
I'm not sure, Edward. I've had very little experience with them.
You look wonderful, Cyrus.
As do you, Edward. I feel good about our necks, Edward.
Thank you, Cyrus. For once, so do I. Yes, for once, so do I. The end. That was a pretty good story. That giraffe was having a little bit of problems with his neck, and he felt a little self-conscious. He was a little worried that people didn't like his neck or that it was too long. But then he was able to solve those problems that the turtle just couldn't solve. All right, so now we're going to do our craft. We're going to do our activity that we have for today. And for this activity, we're going to need just a couple things. We're going to need, and I grabbed them all out of my drawer here. We're going to need 2 pieces of paper. I'm using a yellow piece of paper, and then this green piece of paper. And I need them kind of big because we're going to do a big giraffe craft with these today. Then I'm going to need some orange paint. This is nice paint. I like this paint because it washes off really easily. I need a sponge. So if you don't have a fancy sponge like this one is a sponge on a stick, but if you don't have one of these, just a regular old sponge will work too. You could even cut it into different shapes and things and use that. We're going to need some scissors and a marker. And what we're going to do, I also have a little bowl here that has some water in it for helping me rinse the paint off of my sponge when I'm all done with it. So for this activity, we're going to make big, long giraffe paintings. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one piece of our paper to start. I'm going to start with this green sheet of paper, and I'm going to bend my arm into kind of a giraffe shape. So this kind of looks a little bit like a giraffe, maybe a little bit like a goose too or something like that, but I think it looks a little bit like a giraffe. And I'm going to lay my arm down on my paper just like this, like it's in the shape of a giraffe, and I'm going to trace around it with my marker. Now, you might need a little bit of help doing this part. It's kind of tricky to hold one arm still while you trace with the other arm, so this is a good idea to have someone help you with this part of our craft. So I'm going to really carefully just trace around that, around my hand and around my arm. There we go. And then we'll have this nice arm giraffe shape. And now I'm going to use my scissors to cut out that shape, and we're going to turn it into a stencil. Have you ever used a stencil before? It's usually like a piece of paper or maybe even a piece of plastic that's has a part of it missing, a shape or a space of it missing, so that you can use crayons or markers or colored pencils or something to draw the same shape over and over again as much as you want. I'm going to kind of turn this paper into a giraffe stencil for myself. So I'm going to cut all the way around my arm shape that I traced on my green paper, so then I'll have a big giraffe stencil for me to use with my paint. And while we cut this out and while we work on our craft a little bit, let's answer some of your questions too. So Emily would like to know if having a very long neck slows down their digestive system. If that slows it down when they eat, because their neck is so long and it would take so long for their food to get all the way down into their stomachs. And that's a good question, Emily. And it doesn't. So their neck is a little bit longer than ours, right? So it takes a little bit longer for the food to get from their mouth all the way down to their stomach. But when it does get there, that's when it starts digesting their food. So it takes a little bit longer to get there, but it doesn't really slow the process down all that much. And giraffes are ruminant animals, which means they chew and chew and chew, and their stomachs are really slow and grinding up food and things. Another type of ruminant is a cow. So if you've ever learned about how cows digest their food in their 4 stomachs, giraffes are kind of the same way. Good question. All right, so I've cut out my stencil like this. Ooh, and look, now I have just another extra green giraffe if I want to use that for something later. And I can lay my stencil over my other paper just like this. Perfect. And actually, before I start with my painting, I'm going to take my marker again, I think, and I'm going to trace around my stencil again, just so I have my giraffe shape when I'm all finished that I can see that I made with my marker. I'm going to trace all the way around this, and then I can add some details later too with my marker when I'm all finished painting. Or maybe I could even add those details right now really quickly. I'm going to trace all the way around here. And then, yeah, I think I'll add some details now instead of later. So that'll help me to tell me where the paint needs to go. So I'm going to draw a big giraffe eye. And giraffes, I don't know if you can see very easily on our giraffe here behind me, but giraffes have lots of long, luxurious eyelashes. So I'm going to make sure I give my giraffe some big eyelashes. And I'm going to give it a big, bright, shiny eye for it to look with. And then I think I'm going to draw the giraffe's nose. We'll draw a big nostril. Giraffes have a pretty big nose. And then I'm going to draw the giraffe's mouth. We're going to make it a really happy giraffe. Here we go. Oh, so to start, this is what my giraffe is going to look like. Oh, it's missing something. 2 ossicones on its head. Let's add some ossicones on its head. 1 on this side, and then 1 on this side. Perfect. And now that looks a little bit like a giraffe, right? Ooh, it's missing some ears too. Let's give it some ears. And then we can fill in its spots. That's the other thing that this giraffe is missing. It doesn't have any spots yet, but that's where our paint is going to come in handy. Alrighty, so now my giraffe has got a nose, it's got an eyeball, it's got some ears, it's got a mouth, it's got 2 ossicones. Now it just needs its spots. So let's take my stencil again, and I'm going to put that back over my paper, and I can line up the edges with the edges I drew before. Perfect. Here we go. And then I need some paint. So I'm going to shake my paint up a little bit, just like this. And I'm going to squirt a little bit out onto my, oop, where's my paint tray? I forgot to grab that out of my drawer. Maybe I put it over here. Found it. Let's put a little bit of this orange paint on my paint tray. There we go. And now I can use my sponge to paint some spots on my giraffe. And while we do that, while we add some spots to the giraffe, which I'm gonna make them all different shapes and sizes, just like a regular giraffe, let's answer another question. So Elle would like to know how big a baby giraffe is. So baby giraffes, even though they're babies, are pretty big animals still. So a baby giraffe, it kind of depends on what kind of giraffe it is, how big the baby giraffe might be. So, but baby giraffes are usually a little bit, they're a lot bigger than other babies. They can be, a couple, like several feet tall, about like 4, 5, 6 feet tall when they're born, because they have such those really, really long legs, or even taller than that. But they have really long legs, and they can stand and they can walk up straight within just a few minutes of being born. So here I'm adding lots of big shapes with different numbers of sides on them for my giraffe. I need to put them all down its neck, and then I can put some on its head too. The spots up near its head are a little bit bigger, or a little bit smaller than the spots we find on their neck. So I'm going to make some big spots on their neck, and then I'm going to make some smaller spots up by their head and the top of their neck. Try to leave just a little bit of space in between all of these different spots that we see. I'm so excited to see if you guys paint any giraffes at home, for you to share your pictures with us on Facebook or on our Instagram. I always love seeing the examples of the projects that we do that you guys make too. It's always fun making your own projects, but it's fun seeing projects that your friends make too. Just about done. I need to add a couple smaller spots up here by the top of my giraffe's neck. Maybe a couple more little teeny tiny ones. The teeniest, tiniest, smallest spots you've ever seen. Does the giraffe have any spots on the top of its head? It doesn't really look like it. Looks like the spots go up pretty close to their eyes, and around their eyes and their ears, but not really on the sides or on the top of their head. All right, are you all ready to see? All right, let's take a look. So I'm going to take off my stencil. There we go. And I could use this stencil again if I wanted to. And then let's take a look at our giraffe craft. Ta-da! Awesome! So we made this with just a few simple supplies, some paint, and we traced our arm and gave it lots of details with our markers, some eyes and a nose and a mouth and some ears and some ossicones. Awesome! Like I said, I can't wait to see if any of you make some pictures of some giraffe pictures like this, and if you do, please share them with us, because we love seeing those. And we'll see you next week too, I hope, when we're learning all about the giraffe's North American cousin, the pronghorn antelope. And until then, we'll see you next time, okay? And have fun and keep learning about things. Bye, guys.